Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third in our series on base camp wellbeing, how to survive and thrive in this current situation we all find ourselves in. I hope that this week finds you feeling more settled and starting to find a rhythm and a routine. Just sort of checking in with a number of organisations and people, it feels like the first 2 or 3 weeks were mainly about people dealing with a massive shock and crisis management, kind of feeling like there was an emergency, and now we're starting to move into another phase, a sense of what does the new normal look like, and people are not quite as much in fight flight mode as they might have been earlier. So today we're going to throw a few different ideas in, how we can be aware of our thinking and keep our energy up, and really begin to be more masters of our mind rather than allowing our mind to be in charge. So we're going to share a few tools and a few ideas around that today. So today we're going to start our session a little bit differently from the mindfulness practices we've done in the past. It's still a way of bringing ourselves into the present, but it's a really fantastic exercise that we can do, just as we can work up to 3 minutes a day, but we're just going to do 30 seconds of it now. And it's a really good practice to do to help our mind, and it's a bit like a brain gym of sorts. So I'm going to move away from my computer a little bit so that I can still do this and demonstrate. You're going to put your right hand on your left earlobe and your left hand on your right earlobe, and I hope you can still hear me. And you're going to breathe in as you go down and breathe out on the way out. Breathing in through the nose. And as you were doing the squatting, the idea is that if you've just pushed away from your chair, you squat down and just gently touch your bottom onto the chair, and that's as low as you need to go. So it's not a full knee bend, it's just coming down into a squat and then standing up again. And this is supposed to stimulate, actually research has shown that it stimulates the neural pathways in the brain, and is really beneficial for well-being. So they're doing it in schools, in workplaces, and we thought we'd share that as another way of boosting your energy. And if you've participated with me, you'll find that your energy levels do go up as you go through that. So just having a think about what are the things that are working for people at the moment, what have they put in place to improve the situation that they feel that they are facing. And a lot of people have started to do some different things. A lot of people have found that getting their well-being component or their activity component done first thing in the morning is really good for them, because it invigorates them and gets their brain ready with lots of oxygen and manages the stress hormones. Other people find that they do that in the middle of the day, and that works. Some people are finding when they go and have their lunch that they're making sure they do that outside in the fresh air for a change of scenery, rather than always being in the same environment. Because we know that when we change our environment, it changes our state of well-being, it changes how we feel, and it's a really good thing to do to feel a different feeling, is to change where we are sitting, or where we are being, what room we're in, go out and get the fresh air. And the other thing that people are doing is some people are using goals like 10,000 steps or 5,000 as a starter, and using their Fitbits, and it's just giving them an encouragement or something measurable they can achieve their movement by, so that they can make sure that they've done enough movement for the day, because they're not in the routine that they were. People are still concerned to some degree about how to differentiate between home and work if they're working from home. So it's really important in that situation to find a way of transitioning, walking the dog around the block if you've got one, or changing your clothes, or going and doing an activity in between the two components of working and being at home that signifies or symbolises that you've moved from one place to another. There might be a ritual that works for you. It's really a case of understanding what routine might work for you and sharing ideas as best you can. But for everybody, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, and for some people more than others. And in a way, we've got to the stage where some people are at certain places on the grief curve, and some people are at other places. So you might have been through some of these feelings or places, and you might have done a couple of laps even. You might have done a few of these over a few times. But everyone's going to be in a different place. And as we deal with the crisis or the emergency and move past it into that more stable place, we're going to need to be aware of this and be aware that people around you might be in a different place along here. I know that on Saturday last weekend, I had a bit of a slump, and I just realised that I was getting snappy with people. I had all the tools, but I didn't feel like using them. And I just felt like I just needed some time out. And that's perfectly reasonable. We've been through quite a big journey over the last few weeks, and adjusting to the fact that we are going to be in this new normal for a while, potentially, it's important for us to come to a place of acceptance and non-judgment with how we're feeling, so that we don't make ourselves feel bad on top of that. We don't beat ourselves up for that. So if you've had a bit of a slump, you felt a bit apathetic, just observe it and go, that's cool, that's where I was. Maybe I was on that low part of that curve, and it's time for me just to take some time out. I did a bit of binge watching of The Crown, and that helped me feel a bit better. It's whatever it is for you that you need just to restore your energy levels. How about you, Wayne? Have you had anything like that happen for you?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I had a lot of flurry and adrenaline going on during the first 2 or 3 weeks of this drama, and then got to a point where that sort of wore off. It was a bit like having a seizure, where you have all this energy and drama going on, and then all of a sudden you're out of energy. And I guess you could explain it like on the grief curve. You get through all the drama, and then you go into this depression. And I think a lot of people are feeling like that at the moment, where they've run out of energy. They just need a bit of a break, and they're trying to push on. But I think, we're coming up to Easter weekend here in Adelaide at the moment, and it's probably, what we're saying to a lot of people, it's probably a very good time just to take stock, retreat for a while, spend some time reflecting, maybe writing, reading, doing things with your family, and just really taking care of yourself, as Gabrielle said, so that you can renew your energy and then come back out and face the next stage of the journey we're all doing. So, as Gab said, give yourself permission. It's all very normal to have that feeling at this stage, and you'll get through that and then be able to keep on going. But we do need those little breaks to have those renewal times so that we can refresh ourselves.
That's right. Yeah, it's about self-compassion. Maybe this is, again, one of the lessons of the time, is understanding what we need and really putting our well-being needs first and having some compassion for ourselves, because it's impossible to drive with our foot on the brake and the accelerator at the same time. So as Bruce Lipton shows in this slide here, you can't be in growth and protection at the same time. So when we are needing to look after ourselves, we just need to put the brakes on and do what we need for our well-being, take some deep breaths, rest, relax, recharge, and get what we need so that we can then put the foot down on the accelerator and move towards growth and activation when we need to, without necessarily being in fight-flight mode. But it's about just judging that we can't drive with our feet on both of those pedals at the same time and expect to get anywhere in a good state. So being aware of what we need to do for mindfulness and being aware of our mind and how our mind works is a really crucial thing. So if we can think about how we think and understand that, that gives us more choice and gives us more tools. You may be familiar with the ants versus the pets model. So the ants are the automatic negative thoughts, and the pets are the performance enhancing thoughts. And when we're in a state of crisis or significant change, often we'll be in that fight flight mode. And if we haven't taken care of ourselves and focused on our well-being, we'll have a tendency to go towards the automatic negative thoughts and think, oh, it's all gone really bad. It's all ruined. Easter, as we're facing it this weekend, people are going, some people are saying, oh, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be a disaster. Those are the kind of automatic negative thoughts that people can have. And I think a lot of us do have them, but we don't necessarily need to listen to them. And instead we can substitute them with some pets, some performance enhancing thoughts like, wow, it's going to be really interesting to see how this weekend goes. It's going to be really different. I wonder what we can do differently. There must be something we can learn from this. Maybe there's someone we could ask a question of, or let's try fixing it up. So it's good to think about how can we think about our thinking? How can we do it differently? How can we bring about a different result? And a lot of this has to do with our mindset, and we get to choose our mindset. We're not born with one. It's something that we need to be conscious of. Our environment does affect our mindset for sure, and we also have a choice. So people who are, I like to see this as a continuum rather than someone fitting into just one category. So when we're coming from a fixed mindset and we're down the far left end, if you like, we're more likely to be threatened by change and want things to be in more control and fixed fashion. So it's where people tend to go when they're in fight flight mode. Quite often they'll first want to just kind of batten down the hatches and make sure things are all tidy. And it does provide some protection or a feeling or a perception of safety. On the other hand, though, if we can think of ourselves in a different way and think of our situation in a different way and come either from a more growth or benefit mindset, there's opportunities there for us to come out a different person, come out a better person, come out with new skills. A lot of people are learning things at the moment, studying languages online, getting a whole lot of new skills that they haven't had, or sort of dusted off some old things that they haven't done for a while. It's a great opportunity while we're here to think about, can I bring a growth mindset where I'm going to learn something, or a benefit mindset where what I learn makes a difference for others, or as our environment is appreciating that we're not all driving to and from work, there are benefits that go beyond me in this situation. So in brief, a fixed mindset person is likely to not be so resilient when things are going hard for them, and probably a little less likely to listen to other people. And that's where I was last Saturday, you know, really honestly. I like I said, I didn't want to use any of the tools. I just needed some time out, and I wasn't interested in the feedback. And I think that as long as we don't spend too much time there, we can move forward and have a look at what the opportunities are. I think if we can have well-being practices in mind for when we find ourselves there, then we're more likely to come out of that quickly and move towards a growth mindset. How can I get the positive from this? What can I learn? And how can this benefit the rest of the world or my community, looking at it from a bigger picture point of view? It's a bit similar to, Wayne, it's a bit similar to the Maslow's hierarchy that you were talking about last time we
Yes.
met. So maybe
Yeah,
you could explain that.
when I was looking at that slide this morning, I realised that it fits quite nicely with Maslow's needs hierarchy, which we talked about in the last webinar. And if you look down the bottom there, when we're in survival mode, we tend to have that more fixed way of looking at things because we're just focusing mostly on ourselves, and we're in fear. And then as we move up and we find connection with other people, and we find what value we can bring to the world, and we see things as an opportunity to grow, then we tend to move more into that growth mindset as we're going up the needs hierarchy. And then once our survival needs are taken care of, we're connected with people, we feel better about ourselves, and we have a growth mindset, we're then more likely to go into looking beyond self and helping other people, supporting other people, and looking at the benefit of the situation, which is really what we're trying to do, even though we're also needing to think about our survival needs and how we're going to connect with each other and our friends and family and clients. We find that if we focus at the top of the pyramid there on how we can benefit other people, that tends to draw us from the bottom up to the top of the triangle. And we find that a lot with people who may have nothing. And I guess Mother Teresa is a classic example of someone who just focused on helping other people. And in doing so, she had all of her needs met. And so, yeah, I think it's worth remembering that as well, and how it overlays with the different ways of thinking.
Yeah, thank you. So really, as we would reiterate, it's not what happens to us, but it's our responsibility. It's how we think about what's happening to us that makes the difference of how we are at the effect of what's going on around us or not. So we're going to have a quick look now at the concept of distraction or being indistractable. There's a great book being written by near AR. I don't know if you can see that. Trying to turn that around. There we go. And it's called Indistractable. It's a fabulous, not a small read, but a really great read. And he talks a lot about how we can manage the distractions in our lives and identify them, and how it's really important to identify, firstly, the internal triggers. So what are the things going on between our ears and in our hearts that are distracting us? Maybe some thoughts like the monkey mind that's flipped its lid, and we're looking at the monkey mind that is just going from one thing to the other and bouncing around and not focused, is taking us off and distracting us. There can be all kinds of things that can symbolize that, or that we can become aware of. I think, Wayne, you were telling me something this morning about when you were at the beach that's sort of relevant to this.
Yes, one of the things I've been doing in the mornings, which is part of my normal, I guess, summer, spring, autumn routine, it's not so easy to do in the winter unless you rug up, is to go for a ride to the beach, which is only, I guess, 10 minutes bike ride from where we live. So I usually go down there in the morning and then go for a walk along the beach and then sit in the sand dunes and just do a mindfulness activity where I think about what it would have been like there during times before colonisation, when the Indigenous people, the Kaurna people, lived there. And I get into a state where I'm really calm, and then I'll scan my body, do some breathing, scan how I'm feeling, scan thoughts that are going through my head. And I'll usually come to a point of stillness. And I've actually made a little video of this, which we'll share on our Basecamp Wellbeing site. So look for that and you'll see what I'm talking about. But there this morning, I was sitting in the sand dunes, nice and relaxed, like a Zen master, and just breathing and looking at this beautiful, calm sea. And then I noticed this lady, well, in fact, I didn't really seem to have much peripheral vision at the time, but I could hear this person who had a dog, and the dog started barking and she was yelling at the dog. And then I noticed a sensation of agitation within me, going from this calm state to being really agitated. And then I started noticing all these other dogs walking along the beach and barking, and it just made me realise that it's a bit like our thoughts. You know, we can get into a calm state and then suddenly be distracted by a thought that comes in and grabs our attention. And sometimes we get really distracted by those kind of negative thoughts. So I thought I'd share that as an example of something that happened to me today.
Yeah, thank you. So along with that distraction concept, those are the things that could be our minds, and the external triggers are the things that are happening outside of us that are distracting us. So it could be that we've got a cluttered workplace and there's a whole bunch of unfinished business around us, so it's making it very difficult for us to focus on anything in particular, or we haven't organised our day and we're not actually following a routine or a plan, or there are screaming children or barking dogs or whatever it might be, that are the external triggers that we need to just get a handle on. There are some things like social media. We can create a routine and not get hooked into being attached to social media or a whole lot of our devices or apps, except for at particular times. News updates, I think people are starting to back off those a little bit, and just being really selective and particular about what you do use to get your information from, so that it's not caught up with a whole lot of drama. I'm looking at what are the notifications that are there to remind you of what they want you to look at. The book is actually written by a guy that created a lot of apps, and so he knows very well what the psychology is behind all of those notifications. And any of us that don't like seeing the little red dots on our phones telling us that we haven't looked at the latest Instagram pics or the latest Facebook updates or the WhatsApp or the emails or the you name it, Microsoft updates. There are just so many notifications that come in. We need to manage those. We need to go into the settings on our devices and manage those, whether they ping or not, whether there's a sound or something that's showing up to us. And one of the things where it says making your front page of your device, your phone, with only 6 to 8 apps, he's talking about putting what he calls the slot machines like Facebook and Instagram on the second page rather than the first page, so that it's not the first thing you see when you pick up your phone. And he also suggests maybe going back to the old-fashioned watch, so that instead of using our phone to find out what the time is and then getting taken down a path of distraction, that we just look at the time and all we see is the time when we look at our watch. So there are some interesting thoughts anyway. If that's an issue for you, you may find some of those ideas useful, and you may find the book really useful. And there's the concept as well of surfing the urge, and giving something 10 minutes before you actually satisfy the urge, and really becoming aware of when there are things that you're trying to resist and why they might be so tempting for us at the time. And I know that Wayne's got a couple of examples of this to share with us.
Yeah, one of a personal example, which I talked to Gab about a few weeks ago, was that I have had quite a battle with chronic pain over the years, and it's been interesting to try and figure out, how to manage that. And usually I try to manage it through exercise and meditation and stretching and massage and all of those constructive things. But at times I find that I do need to take pain and fairly strong pain medication. And there's one that I have taken in particular that it's not as a really strong opiate, but it does have an opiate effect. And so you can be on that for 2 or 3 days, not a problem. But if I am on it for too long and then I come off it, what I find is I go into this real kind of depressed state, and I get this real urge to take another pill to kind of get me back up to where I was. And most people would understand this as an addiction. And so I just really noticed that a few months ago, and I tried out this concept of surfing the urge, and I found that if I just hung in there for 10, 15 minutes, that I was able to let that urge pass. And a more simple example for most people would be, when you feel like eating chocolate, you've just seen a chocolate commercial on TV, and you get this real urge to go to the shops and buy chocolate. And you can get into the routine of that, or it might be a drink after work, really need a drink after you've had a shitty day. And sometimes, particularly in the last few weeks, we've found ourselves saying, okay, it must be 5 o'clock drinks time, whereas normally we don't drink during the week and hardly ever on the weekend. So most of us have some sort of vice that we turn to, and it could be social media. It could be that urge to check your phone all the time. So surfing the urge is a simple concept, but it can be really powerfully applied.
Yeah. And sometimes we need assistance to do that. So there might be somebody we will make a commitment with, or a commitment to, that helps us to stay strong in the times when we're trying to deal with some of those potential distractions, and we're having trouble surfing the urge. So in this book, he talks about making a Ulysses pact, which is a freely made decision that's designed and intended to bind oneself in the future, a type of pre-commitment. And there's a story about Ulysses sailing his ship past the land of the Sirens, and how he tied himself to, he hatched a clever plan, and he tied himself to the steering wheel. Trying to think what the word is
The helm.
for the steering wheel. The helm, that's right. Thank you, Wayne. Yeah, this is on a ship. So he's sailing, and he's tied himself to the helm, and he's also put blindfolds on the oarsmen. And that way that nobody can be tempted away from something that they don't want to be tempted towards, if you like. Can't be tempted towards something that they don't want to participate in. And so that's what the idea of making a commitment is. And when you're surfing the urge, having that pact with yourself is really, really useful as well. Okay, so looking at the next one, looking now at some of the things that are tractions. So tractions, he talks about, Nia talks about, are the things that bring us towards what we want. So they're our priorities. They're knowing what is really important to us is what is the traction. And if we think of the word attraction, that makes a lot of sense too. It's the thing that brings us, that's attracting us towards the way we want to live. So in this great time that we have now, even though it's been born from a crisis, we have an opportunity to really readdress what is really important to us, what's really important to us as far as self-care. And that at the moment for our immune system and our well-being, our personal well-being, has to mean we take care of our personal needs, and then we're available for our relationships in a much more effective way. If we're not taking care of ourselves, then our relationships suffer. And if we're not taking care of those things, then our work can suffer. So he talks about dealing with life in these 3 zones and dealing with them in that order: self, and then relationships, and then work. And sometimes for some people, they might not have a whole lot of relationships to work on, so their work is really important. It's part of their purpose. So, you know, you can adjust that according to what works for you. But so I thought it was a really useful suggestion. And time boxing, as we talked about on our last seminar, really making sure that the big rocks are in and that the little things go in around that, so that you know that you're going to get the important things done today. And if the important tasks are to do with a person or a relationship, that they become the main part of your day and not the other tasks that are easier to tick off and know that you've dealt with. So that's a little bit about distractions and tractions. So as we move into this next phase of our existence, it's important that we stay connected. So these were just some ideas we popped together there to make sure that we continue to talk to people live and not just rely on texts. If we could talk to you live and face-to-face, we would be our preference right now, but this is the best option we have right now. And maybe agreeing, having a morning tea. I'm having a Zoom Mad Hatter's tea party on the weekend, you know, just to connect with people and have a bit of fun. Maybe everybody could have a Uber Eats delivery at the same time. Anyway, there's a bunch of things on that list that you could do. Add your own ideas, because being apart doesn't necessarily mean we have to be disconnected. And whatever you're doing, remember that you can put ritual into it, whether you're having a cup of tea or a shower, or just going through your morning routine. Use the tools that are available to you. Use the cycles of the day. Use whatever you can find to help you to reset, to stay creative. Perhaps using fire, you know, as we come into our Easter weekend, we like to use fire to release and let go, burn ideas, burn old ideas that we don't want to have anymore in a fire. It transforms them somehow, makes life begin again and begin anew. So it's really, really good to have tools that you can use to do that with. Even we have card sets available too that have words on them. And this one here says completion. So we have these available if anybody would like to order a card set. But each in there's a bunch of different words, and that word could give you, so here I picked out 2 random words, one's completion and one's begin. So we have to finish one thing before we start another one, and that very much is the theme of the moment. So we wish you well, we wish you connection and peace, and focus as we move into this new phase. And we thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.
Thanks guys. See you later.